Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving into some philosophy today with Friedrich Nietzsche and his essay on truth and lies in a non-moral sense.
Yeah, this one really gets you thinking about how we understand the world around us and like what truth even means.
For sure. So he starts with this kind of fable about clever beasts on a distant star. They figure out how to know things, but then their star dies and poof, all their knowledge is gone. Like,
Yeah.
what's the point of that?
It's pretty striking imagery, right? It's like he's using the whole universe to show how small and temporary human intelligence is. We think we're so important, but ultimately we're just a tiny part of this huge picture. It's humbling.
Yeah, it definitely puts things in perspective. So if
hmm
our intellect isn't this perfect truth-seeking machine, what is his real purpose for Nietzsche?
Well, he actually suggests that its main function is deception. Like, it's a survival tactic for weaker beings. Those who can't rely on brute force.
So we traded sharp claws and big muscles for the ability to lie. That's a pretty unique take on human evolution.
Yeah, it sounds a bit harsh, but he's getting at something deeper. He's saying that even our concept of truth is basically an agreement, a social contract.
Like we all agree on certain words and labels, and that becomes what we consider real or true.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, is truth as we know it just a tool to keep society functioning? Like a necessary illusion to avoid chaos?
Whoa, that's a big question.
Yeah.
I'm already starting to rethink what it means to be right or wrong.
Yeah.
So where does language fit into all this?
Language. That's where Nietzsche's ideas about metaphor get really interesting. He says that language itself is built on metaphors. It all starts with our senses, sight, sound, touch. Then we translate those sensations into images and finally into words.
Okay, I'm following you. So how is language inherently metaphorical?
Imagine explaining sound to someone who's been deaf their whole life. You might use visual metaphors like waves or vibrations, but you're always relying on an analogy, a translation from one sense to another.
So the word sound isn't the actual experience of hearing, it's just a symbol.
Precisely. And Nietzsche believes that this process happens with everything we experience and try to express through language. We're always creating metaphors, moving further and further from the actual thing itself.
So if language is built on metaphors, does that mean our grasp of truth is always going to be a bit, well, shaky? Are we stuck in a world of symbols and representations?
That's a question Nietzsche wants us to grapple with. He's not necessarily giving us a definitive answer, but he's making us think critically about whether language can ever truly capture the essence of reality.
It's like when you struggle to find the right words to describe a feeling or an idea. Maybe it's because language itself has these limitations built in.
That's a really insightful connection. And it leads us to another important concept, the formation of concepts.
Okay, I'm ready to peel back another layer of this philosophical onion. Let's hear it.
It's interesting how even while he's like dissecting the limits of language and concepts, Nietzsche still sees this need we have as humans to make sense of the world. Like we can't help but look for patterns, even if those patterns might be more about us than about some ultimate reality.
Right. It's not enough to just label and organize everything. We need something more than just concepts.
Exactly. He sees art and myth as expressions of that deeper human drive. It's like even with all the order and structure we create our instinct for metaphor making, that translation from sensations to images to words still needs an outlet.
Okay, I can see how art uses metaphors, but how does that challenge the order of our conceptual world?
Well, think about a painting. It can evoke emotions and ideas that go way beyond simple explanations.
Right.
It can show you multiple perspectives at once, blur the lines between categories, and really challenge your assumptions.
So it's like art gives us a different way to see the world, one that embraces ambiguity and emotion rather than trying to define everything with strict rules.
Precisely. And that leads Nietzsche to suggest that art might even offer a different kind of truth. Not the truth of science or logic, but a truth that resonates with our human experience on a deeper, more intuitive level.
Yeah, it's like art bypasses all the limitations of language and concepts and taps into something more primal, more fundamental, maybe even more truthful in a way.
I like that. It's like art gives us a glimpse of the world without the filter of our conceptual frameworks, a more direct experience.
This reminds me of how music can move us so deeply even without any words. It just hits us on a level that logic can't explain. Have you ever felt that?
Oh, absolutely. Music is a perfect example of how art can convey truth and meaning through pure feeling and intuition rather than rationality.
So we have these two ways of approaching the world, the rational concept-driven one and the more intuitive artistic one. Does Nietzsche think one is better?
That's where things get really interesting. He introduces these figures of the rational man and the intuitive man. What do you picture when you hear those terms?
I guess the rational man is all about logic and control.
Hmm.
right? He values knowledge and reason and likes to plan everything out.
Hmm.
The intuitive man, though he's more spontaneous, creative, maybe even a bit impulsive. He follows his gut and embraces the unknown.
Perfect. And you can probably guess each approach has its strengths and weaknesses.
For sure. Like the rational man might avoid risks and make smart choices, but maybe he misses out on some fun. And the intuitive man might be more open to new things, but he could also make some bad decisions.
Exactly. And Nietzsche makes it clear that neither approach is inherently better. They each offer a different way of being in the world with their own advantages and drawbacks.
So it's more about finding a balance between the two, like between our head and our heart.
That's a key takeaway. And it makes us think about our own tendencies. Do we lean towards logic and structure? Or are we drawn to intuition and feeling? And how can we find a balance in our own lives?
It really makes you think about how you approach the world.
Yeah,
I'm definitely a planner, but I also see the power of intuition. It's a tricky balance, isn't it?
it is. And you know what? Nietzsche actually has some interesting ideas about how we can navigate this duality of human experience.
So let's try to put it all together. We've been talking about Nietzsche's ideas on truth, and he's definitely not giving us easy answers. He wants us to look deeper than just surface-level stuff. We've seen how language shapes our understanding and how our concepts can limit us.
Exactly. And we also look at those two ways of approaching the world, the rational and the intuitive. And, neither one is perfect.
Right. It seems like Nietzsche really wants us to be aware of all the things that influence how we see the world. He wants us to question everything and realize that there might not be just one absolute truth out there.
Yeah, he's pushing us to be more conscious of those illusions we mistake for reality. Like those metaphors we talked about. They become truths over time. But he wants us to look closely and see that they're really just human constructs.
So we need to be more critical thinkers, not just accepting things blindly. But how do we actually do that in everyday life?
Well, one way is to be more curious and open to different perspectives. Engage with art, explore different cultures, listen to viewpoints that challenge your own. When we step outside our comfort zones and see a wider range of things, we start to understand the world in a more complex way.
It also makes me think about that balance between being rational and intuitive. Maybe we need to find a way to use both approaches in our lives.
Absolutely. When we embrace both reason and intuition, we can navigate the world with a mix of critical thinking and creativity. We can analyze situations carefully, but also be open to new possibilities.
So it's like Nietzsche's giving us the power to shape our own understanding of truth.
I think that's a great way to put it. He's not giving us all the answers, but he's giving us the tools to question, explore, and create meaning in a world where absolute truth might not even exist.
This has been quite a journey. Nietzsche's On Truth and Lies in a Non-Moral Sense has definitely given us a lot to think about. Any final thoughts for our listeners?
Just this. As you go through life, remember that truth can have many different meanings. Be open to different perspectives, keep questioning your assumptions, and never stop exploring the amazing complexity of being human.
Well said. And to everyone listening, I encourage you to check out Nietzsche's work. You might be surprised at how it changes your own view of truth. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.